Welcome to JK Tells a Story, where real-life dramas unfold. Sit back and enjoy today's tale. There was a glint of light from the bathroom tile joint when I walked in, a reflection of the sunlight that was just beginning to break through the blinds. It didn't blind me, it just caught my attention. I looked down to see what was there since I was barefoot and didn't want to step on anything sharp. Rachel hadn't mentioned dropping anything in the bathroom, but who knew? I didn't notice it at first because without the light, it was almost the same color as the grout between the tiles, but eventually I found it. A small white pill wedged in the gap between the floor and the wall trim. I picked it up and examined it. It had markings on one side but was blank on the other. Since it was Wednesday, I assumed it was yesterday's pill. This meant that the pills had to be taken daily. I knew I was taking no medications. I was 35 years old and as healthy as could be, as was my wife Rachel. We had both recently had our annual physicals and were found to be healthy and fit, so why was there a pill in my bathroom? I knew there were several medications taken daily, but one that came to mind was birth control. Rachel hadn't been on the pill, or at least I thought she hadn't, since I had a vasectomy 2 years ago after the birth of our second and last child. She had no problems with cramps or period pain and was one of those lucky women who had trouble-free periods, so why pills? I have to admit that my first thought was that she might have some illness she didn't want to tell me about. For a few minutes, my thoughts went to very dark places, but I again remembered the physical examination and how we showed each other the reports. We were both clean. If a pill was here, then most likely there were more somewhere. I closed and locked the door. Rachel was still in bed and began to search. It took me a while to find them, but eventually I discovered them buried at the bottom of a box of tampons in a box of aspirin. When I pulled out the strip of pills, I immediately recognized them as the kind she had been taking before I had the surgery, and even before that, between our children when we weren't trying. Why did she start taking the pills again? I had only one answer to this question. She was sleeping with someone who could get her pregnant. She was cheating on me. Rachel and I had been together for 9 years. I had just completed my MFA and was beginning to make a name for myself in the Boston art scene, and she was working as a gallery assistant. We met at an exhibition opening, and although we didn't hit it off right away, there was enough interest for her to accept my invitation to dinner. Rachel was tall, only a couple of inches shorter than my 5 feet 10 inches. She was a former dancer and retained an athletic build, a thin figure and elegant posture. Her grace was simply amazing. We dated for about a year and then got married when I was 26. Our 2 children were 5 and 2 years old, and I had surgery to prevent any further accidents. 2 was our limit. We had the perfect set. Ethan was born first and then Mia. I had an impeccable family, or so I thought. Rachel returned to work, taking maternity leave for each of her children, not wanting to leave the job she loved. We had a nanny who came to look after the children during the day and went home in the evening. She cost almost as much as Rachel made, but Rachel didn't care. She just wanted to work at a job she loved. I worked with a couple of art school friends creating a gallery between us. We were never rich, but we all were doing very well. I cleaned up the bathroom, put her pills back, and decided I needed to think about it. There was no point in confronting her now. I needed a plan. I needed proof. What happens after this? I had no idea. First, you need to collect all the facts and then see where it leads. I went to work as usual and considered my options. First, I wanted to know who and when and also for how long. Was it someone at work? God forbid, her boss? Is this the same person she was communicating with before we met? This brings me to my next terrible question. Were these children even mine? All this time, I didn't let my emotions get in the way. I knew this would happen, that I would feel loss, betrayal, pain, and anger, but first I needed to figure out if it really happened. I was working on the problem and didn't yet have enough facts to draw any conclusions. I went on the internet. First of all, I needed DNA analysis kits. Testing the children would be easy. I often put them to bed before Rachel arrived, so this could be done without trouble. I also ordered surveillance equipment. a couple of small voice recorders that I could hide in her car and bag, and a few tiny cameras that I could hide around the house. I doubted she was meeting her lover at home, considering she was rarely in the house when I wasn't there, or at least I didn't think so. I needed access to her phone. I knew about a cloning tool through which I could get a copy of her phone, access all her messages and emails, and even listen to her calls. To do this, I needed to buy another phone. It took several days for everything to be delivered. During this time, I watched her carefully. Rachel didn't do anything unusual. Our intimate life was pretty standard, once or twice a week, usually on the weekends when we both stayed up late. I never smelled anything suspicious on her, and she never rushed into the shower as soon as she got home. Nothing changed, so either she wasn't having an affair or she was being extremely discreet, or she had been having an affair for so long that it became second nature. The packages arrived on Friday morning. I asked them to be sent to my gallery so that there would be no questions. I had DNA test kits, voice recorders, several cameras, a cell phone, and a cloning kit. I was ready to go. That day, I left the gallery early. When I returned home, the nanny was just feeding the children dinner before putting them to bed. I left her to deal with this matter, and I went and hid the cameras. One in the bathroom, one in the living room, and the third in the bedroom with a good view of the bed. I heard the kids splashing in the bathroom and went to help them get ready for bed. Taking Mia, I left the nanny with Ethan. Having made a swab from Mia's cheek, I put it in my pocket. Then I laid her down and read to her until she dozed off. When I checked on Ethan, he was still awake, and the nanny was still reading to him. I offered to replace her, and she gratefully agreed. It didn't take long for me to take the swab, and in less than 20 minutes, he too was fast asleep. I packed the swab along with the swab taken from my cheek and put them in the mailbox. The postman would pick them up in the morning. The service promised results would be available online within 48 business hours. So that meant Wednesday. Rachel arrived home right on time, and we went about our normal business. She told me about her day, and I told her about mine, neither of us really listening to the other. We had dinner, and then she went to the shower. Taking this opportunity, I installed voice recorders in her car and bag and cloned her mobile phone. I checked the clone to see if there were any incriminating messages or emails, but there were none. Either she was very careful or she wasn't cheating. Couldn't decide. The weekend went by as usual. We had quiet time together both mornings before the kids woke up. It had become almost a ritual, almost even a routine on weekends. She had no calls or messages, and since we spent all our time together, I had no way to check if she was taking the pills, although I checked the strip and saw that the corresponding day's pills were gone. Since it was just her and me in the house over the weekend, and I didn't take the pills, I fairly concluded that she did. On Monday, I told her that I would be working from home. She went to the gallery, and I took the opportunity to take out the flash drives from all the cameras and check them. The bathroom camera confirmed that she had indeed taken the pills, but the real surprise was on the bedroom camera. On Saturday night, while I was preparing dinner, she took a shower. In the bedroom, I saw her using her phone to text someone. There was nothing on the phone I cloned, so she must have a second phone. It definitely wasn't in her bag. So where was it? I watched what she did with it. When she finished writing the message, she walked over to the ventilation duct and, releasing the latch, opened it, hiding the phone inside. I immediately went to check the air duct and found that the phone was not there. She must hide it there when she's at home but takes it with her when she leaves. I needed access to this phone. This was the first concrete evidence that she was up to something, although I still didn't know what it was. There were signs that she was cheating, but it wasn't certain. I watched the footage of her getting dressed that morning and saw her take the phone from the vent unit and put it in her bag before leaving for the day. In the evening, when she returned home, I watched her carefully. She casually dropped her bag in the hallway and continued with her usual evening routine. After dinner, she took a shower, and I looked in her bag. There was no phone there. She must have taken it with her and hidden it in the ventilation unit when she went upstairs. She didn't know, or didn't care, that on the other side of the vent was Mia's room. Quietly listening, I crept into my daughter's bedroom and opened the vent on her side. There was a phone there. I grabbed it, took it to my office, and cloned it onto my new phone in a couple of minutes. I returned it and was almost closing the vent when I heard my wife getting out of the shower. I approached and sat down by Mia's bed and began stroking her hair when my wife entered. "Something happened?" she asked quietly. I shook my head. "I like to come and sit with one or the other of them from time to time," I whispered, "just to remind myself how lucky I am to have two such wonderful children." She smiled. "You are a soft old man," she said. "Come on, let's go before you wake her up." I was able to look at the clone of the phone only the next day. That's when my world collapsed. The sound of my secretary's intercom did not penetrate as I sat in my office chair and stared at the cloned messages, tears streaming down my face. Eventually, she apparently got tired of trying and knocked briefly before entering my office. She poked her head through the door and saw me. Jessica, my secretary, was an emotionless woman who dressed much older than her years. I would give her between 30 and 40 years old. She was slim with red hair and green eyes. She always dressed conservatively in clothes that would be appropriate on someone much older. Our relationship had always been 100% professional. I never even raised an eyebrow in her direction, although I saw the result when someone did. It wasn't pretty. I had to talk to one of my business partners who was known as the gallery's ladies' man. He flirted with her because he couldn't bear the thought of a woman who wouldn't fall for his charms. She told me in no uncertain terms that if he didn't quit, she would quit and sue the gallery not only for constructive dismissal but also for sexual harassment. She told me that the only reason she hadn't done this yet is because I always treated her with respect and never did anything I shouldn't have done. My business partner was furious and wanted to fire her immediately. He gave us an ultimatum. Either she would leave or he would. So I became the owner of 60% of the gallery shares, and instead of the 40% with which I started, I had one less partner. Jessica immediately left when she saw me, apparently to deal with whatever she was trying to call me about. I heard voices in my outer office, and then everything went silent. Jessica returned to my office, closed and locked the door. Then she came over and, moving a chair from the other side of my table, sat down a meter away from me and facing me. She pulled out some napkins from where women always seem to have a supply and handed them to me. I took them blindly and started wiping my eyes. "Tell me," was all she said. I showed her the phone. There were text messages from Rachel and back. The other party was not named, no names were used, but they talked about secret meetings. Whoever it was, he knew her well, talked about things that only I should know about, personal details that only a lover could know, and not just a casual lover, a long-term lover. I was never mentioned in any of the texts. It was as if I did not exist. There wasn't even a he said or he did this or that. I simply wasn't there. There wasn't even an extraneous thought. "Do you know who?" she asked, still being businesslike. I shook my head. "How do you know?" she asked. I told her about finding the pill in the bathroom floor joint, then about the pills. The story just flowed like a river. The whole time I was talking, she just sat and looked at me. After a while, I realized that she was holding my hand. This was the first time I thought that we had actually touched each other. "You need more information," she said. "The children's DNA will be obtained on Wednesday. Can you hold out until then?" "I don't know," I said. She nodded. "Our client in Portland needs to see your latest works," she said. "I booked you a ticket for the next flight. You'll be back on Thursday." "I can't think about it now," I said. "That's what you tell Rachel," she said. She took my phone, typed a text message, and sent it to Rachel. "Something happened in Portland. Need to go and review some work. I'll be back on Thursday. Love you." The answer came almost instantly. "Okay. Let me know you got there. I'll see you when you get back." She looked at the phone for a second, her lips curling. Then she gave me my phone back and took out hers. "Lorraine," she said. "Jessica." "Yes, thank you. When are you free this afternoon?" Great. See you then. Go get yourself in order, she told me in a businesslike manner. The tone of voice and the fact that I was almost conditioned by her to do what she told me in the office meant that I did just that. It was actually nice not having to think, postponing decisions and plans for someone else. When I came out of the bathroom, she was holding my jacket. Where are we going? I asked. You have an appointment with an old friend of mine, she said. I just went. Lorraine turned out to be Jessica's best friend and also a divorce lawyer. She was apparently working on Jessica's divorce when she discovered her husband was cheating on her with one of his employees. Jessica explained the situation to Lorraine, and I watched in almost a state of stupor. This didn't happen to me. Lorraine has obviously seen this many times in her career. Once she had all the facts we had, she turned her attention to me. Mark, she said. It wasn't me she was talking to, someone else. I felt pain in my cheek. Jessica slapped me. I woke up from surprise. I saw shock and amusement in Lorraine's eyes, but they quickly disappeared when she looked at me. Mark? She asked. I nodded. Do you have any ideas what you want to do with this? At these words, my artist brain woke up. Plans were what I was good at. Kill them both, I said. I expected at least a shocked exclamation from Jessica, but surprisingly, she even grinned. Okay, said Lorraine. I understand it, but unfortunately, this is not an option. You see, this is against the law. However, we have several legal options. Let's look at them. Before I start, she said, I'm just laying out your options. I am not advocating any of them. This may happen later. The first option is to do nothing. She doesn't know that you know, but as far as I'm concerned, you've had a pretty happy life and that shouldn't change. Keep up the good work playing the ignorant game. Secondly, an amicable divorce. File a statement of irreconcilable differences. Divide your gallery, home, finances. She makes less than you, so you will probably have to pay support for her for several years, at least for the children until they graduate from high school. Thirdly, act nuclear. Sue for adultery. If the children are not yours, sue for a fake birth certificate. Sue whoever the other party is for alienation of affection. If he is the father, sue him to get back all the money you spent on the kids. If he is a coworker, sue him for not following the fraternization policy. Nowadays, almost every company has such a policy. If the other party is married, provide their partner with all the information about the affair. If she knows, then we can have a case against her. If not, then perhaps I can represent her interests in the divorce. Make it public. Tell everyone, friends, relatives, colleagues. If she is a member of any societies or art groups, tell them. To humiliate her with all your might. We need to protect your assets. Sell your share of the gallery into an offshore trust. Mortgage the house. Take whatever you can. Take the cash along with the money you get from the gallery. Cash out your 401k and have a spending spree. My thoughts raced through my head like a whirlwind. I instantly understood what she was saying. Option 1 was not an option. I was no one's fool. Option 2, not a chance. I spent too much time building the gallery and giving us the lifestyle we had. She can forget about taking half of everything I have and then continue to let me support her while she has fun with someone else. Option 3, I said. Nuclear. Lorraine smiled. Fine. Then I'll start filling out the paperwork. I would suggest starting covert surveillance of your wife and trying to find out who, when, and where. We really need more evidence. Can I keep this phone? She asked. I see that it is not doing you any good. I nodded and handed her the phone. Jessica and I left Lorraine's office, and she took me to a small family hotel. She booked a room for me. Go take a shower and order something from room service, she said. She took full responsibility. I'll be back later with some things for you. I acted mechanically. My whole world was falling apart, and I was sitting in a hotel room ordering room service as if I was on autopilot. This was the only way I could cope with the stress of what was happening. 9 years on the toilet. What really hurt was that I was completely oblivious to all of this. How did I not notice what she was doing? Who was it? The same boss to whom she returned after each child? She told me that she liked her job and her independence. But was that the real reason? Or could she just not stand being away from her lover for so long? I looked speculatively at the minibar and was about to give in when Jessica entered the room. "Don't even think about it," she said. "I need you to think and not drown your sorrows. You need to plan, and you can't do that if you look at the world through the bottom of a bottle." "To plan?" I asked gloomily. I tried. I had a plan, and it was a good plan. I had a loving wife and 2 gorgeous children. And now look where I am. I have a cheater as my wife, and I don't even know if these 2 children are mine. I'm the biggest fool in the world. My whole life is falling apart, and you want me to plan? I said it all. She looked at me for a few moments. I waited for her to say something, maybe sympathize with me, maybe even hug me. Then she looked at her watch. "Okay," she said, all businesslike. "The pity party is over. How many times when we were starting the gallery did you run into obstacles and your plans fell through? What does this have to do with?" "How many?" she insisted. "I don't know," I said. "A whole bunch. There was a time when the insurance company tried to deny coverage for an international exhibition shipment, and we won the claim against all odds. There was a time when the bank tried to foreclose on us early because they were under pressure." "Sure, there was a time." "Okay," she said. "At what point in all those times did you sit down, put your head in your hands and give up?" "That was different," I replied. "Why?" she asked. "What was different?" "In those days, then I had something to fight for," I said. "I had a family that depended on me." "You have a family now," she said, "which also depends on you, and it is much larger than the family you have at home. 41 people and their families are depending on you to handle this. None of your partners are capable of keeping the gallery afloat. You are all artists, but of the 3 of you, you are the only businessman. If you lose, the gallery loses. Do you think this woman cares about the families that depend on the gallery? If she gets half, she'll sell it to the highest bidder, and you'll lose control of the business you've built. Do you want this?" I stared at her. She was right. I'd worked too long and too hard to let it all go to whoever gives this woman more money. I needed to get everything in order to secure my future and the future of my employees. If the kids were mine, I'd make sure they were taken care of. But as for Rachel, well, she made her own bed. I could grieve this relationship when I'm sure everything else is fine. My confusion cleared, and driven by anger and determination, I sat down with Jessica and began to make plans. I was going to secure the future of the gallery and take care of the only family I had left. It was the moment I made this decision that everything fell into place. The pain went away. The indecision disappeared. I had direction. Jessica saw the change in my expression and nodded in satisfaction. "That's the kind of Mark I need right now," she said. "Someone who knows how to plan for the future." We spent the rest of the evening making plans on how to secure the future of the gallery. At first, I was in favor of selling my shares in the gallery to partners, but Jessica rejected this idea. She felt that I could not trust them to run the gallery or leave it in my hands once they became the majority shareholders. "They will run it into the ground," she said. "You need to maintain control." In the end, we decided that we could create an offshore trust to which I would sell the gallery at market price. I would then remain with the same trust as the CEO on a minimum salary. I would earn virtually nothing on paper. Because the trust was offshore, the courts would have no jurisdiction over its documents, so the owners of the trust would not be known. Now I was a millionaire, at least on paper, or would be when all this was done. I needed to get rid of all this capital. I also needed to cash out my 401k and free up all the equity on the house. Although we were together when we bought the house, it was only in my name, as Rachel was not working at the time of purchase. She was carrying Ethan, and the mortgage advisor told us it would be easier to put the loan in my name as she was not earning at that time. I made a list of what I needed to do and wrote to my lawyer, who was handling the gallery's legal affairs, to set up a meeting the next day. After Jessica left, I took a shower and went to bed, not expecting to sleep for long. I passed out almost as soon as my head hit the pillow and slept until the alarm on my phone woke me up the next day. On my phone, there was a message from Rachel. "You didn't inform me of your arrival. Is everything okay? Sorry. I planned until late, then I fell asleep. Everything is coming together now. I should be back on Thursday. Okay, see you. Love you XX." I did not respond to this message. I just couldn't bring myself to type those words. Jessica knocked on my door a little after 8. I took another shower and was just thinking about going to breakfast. "Breakfast," she said, indicating that I should follow her. We went to a diner down the street and sat in a booth eating bacon and pancakes with maple syrup. Part of me couldn't understand why I was acting this way, as if my world didn't collapse and my heart didn't burst out. My reasoning was that at some point, when the dust had settled, it would all come down on me. However, I did not want this, but for now I needed to work. "Brian Spencer," Jessica said, calling the name of my lawyer. "He called and said he had time at 10 to meet with us. We can go to your bank first and cash out your 401k and also release equity from your house before we go there. I understand that consolidating my money is worth it," I said. "But there is still a record that I had it all. Can't the court just order me to pay her?" "Only if you still have them," Jessica grinned. "That's where your spending spree comes in. Once you have all this capital, you go and spend a lot of money, and all this before you file for divorce. That way, when you are judged in court, you will be poor in debt, actually. The bank will foreclose on your house, and your salary will barely be enough to live on. This is provided that the children are not yours. If they're yours, you'll simply put your entire 401k in trust for them for their college fund. Rachel won't be able to touch it. Technically, she will earn more than you. She can easily afford the house on her own and may even end up paying you alimony. When will you get the DNA results?" "The company said the results should appear on the internet sometime today," I said, picking up the phone. I checked the email the company sent me and there was a link that I clicked on. Started to load, but then I put the phone down. I wasn't sure I was ready to see the results yet. "Mark?" Jessica asked. I pushed the phone towards her. She took it and looked at the screen, scrolling up a few times. I watched her face, looking for clues, trying to guess from her expression what she might say. "The results are not ready yet," she said. "According to the tracking data, they should be received within the next 12 hours. I let out a breath I didn't even know I had let. "Let's go," she said, getting up. "The bank should already be open." Freeing up equity in the house and cashing out my 401k took surprisingly little time. I closed all of our savings accounts, including our children's college funds, and transferred the money to an account I opened in my name. The only account I left alone was the joint account we use daily. In any case, there was less than $10,000 in this account. My lawyer stuck a huge paddle into our plans, but if it can be done in a good way, he did it. I said, "You are forgetting one thing," he said when we outlined our plan to him. "You have a marriage contract." "I have." I was surprised. I had no idea. "That was a condition of the partnership agreement when you started working," he reminded me. All partners were required to enter into a prenuptial agreement that would protect the gallery in the event of a breakup. It only applies to the gallery, but she does not have any rights over the assets of the gallery for divorce purposes. You are an employee of the gallery, and therefore, at best, she can claim your salary and 401k, that's all. "What would you suggest?" I asked. "And I don't mean to say anything bad about your divorce lawyer, but the plan is to use all the equity you have freed up from the house and 401k and invest it in the gallery, buy out one of your partners. I know that Robert hinted at a desire to cash out. You don't have enough funds for this, but you could take out a loan from the gallery pension fund to make up the difference. Payments will be made from your salary, which means your income will be much less when you are assessed for assets. And since everything else will be tied to the gallery, it is sacrosanct. Your credit rating will take a hit when the bank forecloses on your house, and you'll lose half of everything you have left in the bank. But other than that, she won't get anything. We can make your salary less than hers, so she may even end up paying you child support. What can I live on? I asked. If my entire salary is tied to payments, I will still need somewhere to live and eat, not to mention that I have 2 more children and I paused. At least I think they are mine. Wait with the children, he said. Have you already decided what to do if they are not yours? Will you still be involved in their lives? I don't know, I said. It's too terrible a thought to think about. I'll have to wait until I know for sure before making such decisions. Don't forget about the other parts of your plans regarding the lawsuits, he reminded me. I'm willing to bet you get enough money from the lawsuit against her employer to pay off the loan and get back to getting a full salary when this is all over, not to mention demanding back the expenses from the father of the children if it turns out that they are not yours. Since this will occur after the divorce, it will not be considered part of the settlement agreement. Could you contact Robert on my behalf and see if he is interested in selling? I'm not sure I'm capable of that right now. He nodded. I'll call him and then let you know, he said. We shook hands and left his office. I felt relieved as we left the building. Plans began to come together, which always gave me a feeling of deep satisfaction. Then I remembered why we made these plans. My relief disappeared, and I felt an emptiness in my chest. We were sitting in a diner having lunch when I dared to look at my phone again. Once again, I couldn't bring myself to do more than click on the link in the email before handing over the phone to Jessica. And again I watched her face, waiting for the reaction that would tell me whether I had become a father or not. I'm so sorry, Mark, she said softly. This was the most unbusinesslike answer I have ever heard. She handed me the phone and I read the results myself. Neither child was biologically mine, although they had the same father. It just wasn't me. The double blow of losing both my children was replaced by the rage I felt at the betrayal. Not only did she pass these 2 children off as mine, but she also convinced me to have a vasectomy, which meant I could no longer have children of my own. Mark, Jessica snapped, bringing me back to myself. Now is not the time or place. Keep calm. We will get through this. I promise. I took a few deep breaths, suppressing my anger. I really wanted to cause serious physical harm to someone. I even had dark thoughts about the man who fathered the children who were supposed to be mine. Jessica pulled herself together again and led me out of the diner. Lorraine called, she said. She wants to see you, and we headed to Lorraine's office. Lorraine looked gloomy when we entered her office. I have a preliminary report from a private investigator, she said. Obviously, Rachel wasted no time. Last night, a man came to your house and stayed the night. We couldn't look inside. I have cameras installed in the house, I said. I can go swap the flash drives, and we can see what happened. Okay, she said. Go ahead and do it now, and then we can make a plan. I'm guessing the information on these flash drives will be important. There will be a nanny there, I said. I can't go back. It is believed that I will be out of town on business. Lorraine checked her phone. The nanny is at the play center with Mia and Ethan, she said. I'll keep an eye on her and let you know if she comes back. My house was about 30 minutes from Lorraine's office, and Jessica was driving fast. We got there without incident, and I changed the flash drives. We quickly examined the house but did not see anything unusual. We then returned to Lorraine's office. We checked the flash drives. I decided not to look at the one in the bedroom. I didn't need to see what was happening there. It was clear who we were talking about as soon as he walked through the door. As I suspected, it was her boss, the man she worked for the entire time we were together. Daniel Wright. What almost killed me was what happened when he pulled up to the house. First, he had his own key and entered the house. As he entered, Ethan looked up and saw him. Papa Daniel, he exclaimed and ran to hug him. This freed my hands. I broke down and started crying. I couldn't watch anymore. Lorraine watched as I broke down. Jessica, for the first time ever, hugged and held me while I cried. It took a while, but eventually I pulled myself together. "Do you want to rest a little?" Lorraine asked, and I shook my head. The pain subsided a little, but anger began to take over me again. "What's next?" I asked. "I already have a copy of the terms of employment in your wife's gallery," Lorraine said. "There's an anti-fraternization clause, so you have a case against the gallery for violating it, since the person with whom your wife is fraternizing is a top manager of the gallery. The gallery cannot claim that she did not know about what was happening." We explained to Lorraine what my gallery's lawyer had told me and his advice. She burst into a huge smile. She picked up the phone and called him, asking for copies of the prenuptial agreement, and he emailed them to her. "This is just perfect," she said, reading the marriage contract. "Throw away everything I said before. Your lawyer's plan is absolutely correct. If your partner wants to leave the gallery, buy him out. Put everything you have into the gallery, and it will immediately put it out of reach. We can sue her employer for failure to comply with their own policies, him for alienation of affection, her for making a false statement on her birth certificate, and both of them for money spent on the children so far. The deduction for medical bills for childbirth alone is a significant amount. It all depends on whether Robert wants to sell his shares, I guess. We'll have to wait until the lawyer comes back with an answer," I said. Jessica drove me back to the hotel, and I went up to my room. I was just about to sit on the bed when there was a knock on the door. I opened it and saw that she was standing in the corridor. "Let's go," she said. "You can't stay here." "What?" I asked. "Why?" "Because you can't be alone," she said. "You will only brood or attack the minibar. I want you where I can look after you." While she was talking, she collected my few belongings. She took me by the hand and led me out of the room, then examined me and led me to her car. "Where are we going?" I asked, finding that I didn't care. "To my house," she said. "I have a spare room that you can use." "But I began. She turned her head and looked at me. I fell silent. I had never been to Jessica's house and was surprised to see that it was almost the same size as mine. Our house had 2 floors while hers had only 1 floor. She led me into a room with a bathroom. "Take a shower and change," she ordered. "Dinner in 30 minutes. We ate dinner in silence. I suppose it was delicious, but I didn't taste it. My mind was occupied with a whirlpool of thoughts that could not calm down. I was furious, but I couldn't find the strength to express it. I was devastated, but I couldn't find the strength to worry. All I had enough energy for now was to implement my plans. I was on autopilot. My destination was set. I was just wondering what to do after eating when the phone rang. I winced and hoped it wasn't Rachel. "Hello, Robert," I said languidly. "Why?" That's all he asked. "Robert and I have been friends since art school. We studied together, and it was the exhibition we worked on together that gave us the basis for starting the gallery. At first, I got most of the gallery shares because I had more capital to invest than he did. Rachel is cheating on me," I said, my voice weak. "All this time," he said incredulously. "Do you mean none of the children are mine?" I nodded, then realized he couldn't see me. "Yes, neither of them," I said. There was silence on the other end of the phone. "So you want to tie all your assets to the gallery and hide behind a prenuptial agreement?" he asked. Either Brian Spencer, our lawyer, explained everything, or he understood the partnership agreement much better than I did. "I want to keep 5%, he said, "and stay with the gallery as a consulting artist. I will discuss the details with HR. The rest is yours." "Okay," I said. "I'll ask Brian to prepare the documents." "Mark," he said after a moment, "I'm really sorry. I know it doesn't feel that way to you now, but it will get easier later. Promise. I've been almost where you are now, and it's really getting easier." Only then did I remember that he got divorced about 4 years ago. I didn't know the details because, even though we were friends, he was a very private person. I just knew it wasn't very nice. So he remembered the marriage contract. He used it himself. The next morning, Jessica woke me up with a cup of coffee. "Let's go," she said. "We still have a lot to do." The first thing we did was go to Brian Spencer, the gallery's lawyer. He had already prepared all the documents for my buyout of Robert, and we completed the entire transaction in less than 30 minutes. I gave him everything I took from my home equity, my savings, and my 401k. I also had to take out a loan against the gallery pension plan for the remaining amount. Now, at least on paper, I was about $1 million in debt. My salary was almost halved because the loan payments were taken out before taxes. Then we went to Lorraine's. I showed her all the documents for the deal, and she was delighted. "This is perfect," she said. "I'll file the documents today, and we can submit them on Monday if you want. We will serve them to him, her, and the gallery at the same time." "Where do you want her to be served?" "Where it will cause her maximum embarrassment," I said. "If you could do it through a billboard in the middle of Newbury Street, I'd gladly pay for it." Lorraine laughed. "We'll serve her at the office," she said, "on Monday at 10 o'clock in the morning, provided that the papers go through the court before that time. If I send them today, I should have them tomorrow afternoon." I nodded. "So what now?" I asked, and I looked at Jessica. She ran things now. "We have 2 more stops before you go back to the office and pretend you just got back from meeting clients in Portland. Do you think you can hold out at home until Monday?" "I think I'll have to," I said. "No need to guess," she said. "Tell me what is needed to help you hold out until this time." "I don't know," I said. "Any good news?" She smiled at me. "Then let's go," she said. To my surprise, we stopped at the medical center where I had all my checkups and where I had the procedure that meant I would never be a father. "What are we doing here?" I asked. "Didn't you want good news?" she said. "Let's go." I followed her into the clinic and stood aside while she walked to the reception desk. The administrator nodded and motioned for us to sit down. We sat down. Less than 2 minutes later, my doctor came out and invited me into the consultation room. I looked at Jessica, who made no move to follow me. "Please," I said, and she nodded and followed me. Dr. Harrison made no comment about my secretary's involvement in my consultation. He knew who she was and that she was not my wife since he was both my doctor and Rachel's doctor. Why? I wondered. My secretary's involvement was my business, not his. "Mark," he said, "I understand that you wanted to ask about vasectomy reversal." My eyes widened. "Is this even possible?" I looked at Jessica. There was a tiny smile on her face. "Yes, it is possible, of course," said Dr. Harrison. "Since your vasectomy was performed 3 years ago, the success rate for reversal operations is about 95%. The surgery is a little longer than the original one and involves general anesthesia, but I'm confident you'll be able to father children again once we're done." And again, my eyes filled with tears. I still had a chance to become a father. It meant surgery, but it was a small price to pay for being able to have children of my own. "I know it's hard to accept," the doctor said, "but here is information about the operation and its cost. Unfortunately, it will not be covered by your insurance. If you would like to proceed, please let me know, and we can schedule you for testing." "Thank you, doctor," Jessica said, standing up and taking the information from him. "We'll be in touch." Standing up, I also allowed her to lead me out of the clinic and towards her car. "Is this good enough news?" she asked, smiling softly at me. In an impulse, I hugged her and pressed her to me. "Thank you," I said, burying my face in her hair. Then I realized what I had done. I instantly let go of her and stepped back. "I'm so sorry," I said. "It's okay, Mark," she said softly. "Everything is fine." We got into her car. "One more stop, then back to the office," she said. I visited Daniel Wright's house several times during the years that Rachel worked for him. He and his wife Stephanie lived in a nice area just outside the city. It was a gated community. They held some gallery events here, I said. Why? I asked Jessica. Jessica simply got out of the car and walked to the door of the house. I followed her. She didn't even have to knock. Stephanie was told by the security guard who led us into the area that we were on our way, and she was standing at the door waiting for us. Mark, she greeted. You must be Jessica, his secretary. Was it you who called? Yes, and it's me, Jessica answered. Come on in, Stephanie said. She led us into an office-like room off the hallway. I'd never been in this room. Judging by the photographs on the table and on the wall, it was Daniel's office. But she sat down at the table and pointed to the chairs opposite. She seemed to have decided that this was not a personal call. How can I help you? Stephanie asked, looking at me that I sat and looked at her, unable to speak. Did you know? I finally asked. Stephanie sighed sadly. No, she said. I suspected but didn't know. I could never find any evidence, nothing that I could take to a lawyer. Otherwise, I would have taken the bastard for every penny he had. In line, Michelle muttered. Do you have evidence? Stephanie asked, and I nodded. Proof that none of my children are mine, that they have the same father. Video of him and Rachel at my house where my son calls him. I couldn't finish the sentence. The lump threatened to choke me, and I was lost again. Oh, Mark, I'm so sorry, she said. I suspected for years that he and Rachel, but he was so careful. I followed him, checked his phone, email. I even confronted him, but he managed to convince me that I was just paranoid. The PIS I hired didn't find anything. Honestly, if I were sure, if I had evidence, I would immediately come to you, but I couldn't ruin what looked like a happy marriage based on suspicion alone. I needed to be sure, and I couldn't get any proof. What are you going to do? She asked that I wondered if I should tell my enemy's wife about my plans. It's unknown whether she will tell him everything as soon as he returns home. It might have been too late for him to do anything meaningful, but I wanted it to be as shocking for him as it was for me. The question is, what are you going to do? I asked. Now you have proof. She smiled slightly at this. I understand, she said. And I don't blame you. I wouldn't say either. If you have the name of a good divorce lawyer, I would appreciate it. Jessica took a business card from her purse and handed it to her. Thank you, she said. She looked at the card. Will a week be enough? I nodded. Great, she said. I'll contact her. She showed the card, and I agreed with her choice. She stood up. Obviously, our meeting was over. Jessica and I stood up. Stephanie came over and gave me a quick hug and a peck on the cheek. Again, I'm so sorry, she said. Look after him, she said to Jessica, who flinched when she hugged me. He deserves better than what that woman did to him. We returned to the office, and I spent the rest of the day finishing up the things I had to do while I was in Portland. At the end of the day, Jessica knocked on my door at her usual time, looked in and said she was going home. She was back to being the professional she always was. This also left me feeling lost. I felt like I was starting to get a little closer to her, but that must have been just my imagination. I wished her good night, thanking her for her help. I worked late at the office and had a lot to catch up on. A message from Rachel arrived around 8 p.m. What time will you be home? Probably another hour or two. I need to finish up some things after the trip. I'll probably be asleep already. I have to get up early in the morning. I love you XX. And again, I could not bring myself to respond to this message. I continued working until almost 11 p.m. I really wanted her to be asleep when I got home. The less I have to communicate with her, the better. When I returned home, the house was in darkness. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. I stopped by to see Mia and Ethan. They were both asleep and looking as adorable as ever. I felt a sob welling up in my chest and had to hide in the bathroom. I couldn't let Rachel catch me crying over children that weren't even mine. I still haven't decided what to do with the children. It's unlikely that any of them will remember me if I just leave them. I had no responsibility to them, but I still loved them both. How could I abandon them when less than 48 hours ago? They were my children, my flesh and blood, my pride and joy. And now they were just more evidence of my wife's infidelity. I decided to wait and see what happens next. In any case, the decision may not be made in my favor. I went to bed, doing my best not to wake Rachel. I didn't fall asleep right away, and when the alarm clock woke me up in the morning, Rachel had already left. When I entered the kitchen, the nanny was feeding the children. I looked at her. She should have known. It's impossible that she doesn't know. Was she really still looking at me and laughing at the stupid fool who couldn't even satisfy his wife? Did she know that the children weren't even mine? Did she take the children to say goodnight to Papa Daniel, as she so often did to me? My mind was wandering, and I was imagining terrible scenarios. I shook my head angrily. She knew, I deduced, and on Monday, I would take great pleasure in firing her. I would do everything to ensure that this woman never works as a nanny again. I'll tell the agency that... Wait, what am I doing? Taking my anger out on someone who has little hope that this situation will turn out right? You're damned if you do and damned if you don't. If she told me, she would lose her job. She could have left, I reasoned. But then it seemed that she also had feelings for children whom she looked after even before Mia was born. I was angry, but perhaps at the wrong person. Then I went to work. When I arrived, Jessica was already in the office. It was as if the previous few days had never happened. She was all business, although I noted in my planner that she had cleared my day for what she called marketing. I settled into my office and she brought me my morning coffee, as she did every day for the 9 years of working for me. Then she sat down on the opposite side of the table. Only then did I notice that she had brought coffee for herself too. Marketing? I asked. Since when have I been involved in marketing? She grinned. It was a pretty evil grin, and for some reason, it gave me a warm feeling inside. We need to make a plan, she said. The last part of Lorraine's strategy. I looked at her, not understanding. What I said. Tell everyone, Jessica said. Your friends, family, art groups, volunteer groups. Anyone and everyone she interacts with needs to know who she is and what she has done. It won't put me in a good light, I said. I'll become a laughingstock, a fool who can't even satisfy his wife and is raising other people's children. You have to tell your story, she said. If you don't do it, then Rachel will, and believe me, it will make you look much worse than being an ignorant victim. What about an abusive husband or someone who abuses their children? People will believe this crap, and when we expose her, she'll respond with everything she's got. Speak up first, and people will be less likely to believe any counter-accusations. Some, of course, will believe it, but nothing can be done. Jessica put together a media package containing all the evidence of Rachel's infidelity. There was a private investigator's report, a copy of the DNA report showing that I was not the father of my 2 children. There were copies of videos taken in my house, including the one of Ethan greeting Daniel and videos from the bedroom that I had not seen and did not want to see. Later that morning, I received an email from Lorraine. Apparently, Stephanie gave her a sample of Daniel's DNA. She checked it against the DNA test I received, and it turned out that he was definitely the father of both children. I paused at the word children. I thought suddenly, I stopped thinking of them as my children. We included this new information in a package and prepared them for submission. They will be sent to Rachel's parents, my parents, and Rachel's brother and sister, who I was very close to. Electronic copies will be sent to all her Facebook and LinkedIn contacts, as well as anyone else I can send them to. Those addressed to our immediate family, I paid a courier company for delivery at 10 o'clock in the morning on Monday, the exact time the papers were supposed to be served. I just needed to get through the weekend. I had a plan to do this. Since I have an artistic mind for details, It took me less than an hour to design and build a small device. It had a motor, a timer, and a battery. I could set it up so that the motor would spin, creating a vibration after a certain amount of time. When I got home on Friday night, I hid the device under Mia's pillow after the nanny left. It was supposed to go off at 6 o'clock in the morning the next day, which is about the time we usually wake up. This would wake Mia up and therefore eliminate our weekend morning time together. Everything worked perfectly. I was woken up by Mia coming into our room and climbing into bed with us. As a result, no intimate time with Rachel. I smiled to myself. I managed to keep myself busy for the entire Saturday, doing all the things Rachel had asked me to do for months. When she commented on this, I simply said that it was high time they were done since she was pestering me for so long. On Saturday night, when unexpectedly Rachel tried to initiate intimacy, I pretended to be asleep when she came out of the bathroom. And on Sunday, her daughter came back to her room, having been awakened from sleep by my device. On Sunday, we decided to go for a walk with the children and spent the whole day at the zoo. There were several times throughout the day when I looked at Rachel, the woman I loved, the woman I thought loved me, and the two children I cared for, thinking they were mine, and I almost broke. I bit the inside of my cheek until it bled, trying to contain my emotions, but made it through the weekend. On Monday, I was excited. I told Rachel that I would work from home. She left for work at her usual time, poking her head into my office to tell me she was leaving. I pretended to be engrossed in email and just grunted in response. I heard her car leaving the garage and the door closing. I looked at the clock. 8:15 a.m. The nanny knocked on my office door. She wanted to take the children to the play center, but I said no, they should stay at home. This surprised her. I had never turned her down before. She just nodded and went back to the children. I heard how upset Ethan was that he couldn't go, but he really wanted to. A little after 9 a.m., Jessica arrived at the house. I was surprised but let her in. For the first time since I've known her, I made coffee for her. At 9:30 a.m., we had a conference call with Lorraine. "Mark," Lorraine said, "this is your last chance to stop. I'm not saying you should. I'm just saying that if you changed your mind over the weekend, now is the time to say it." "No," I said without any doubts. "Then I'll see you on the other side," Lorraine said. Everything was ready. I kept an eye on my email inbox, waiting for service confirmation emails to arrive. At exactly 10 a.m., the first one arrived, the second 3 minutes later, and the third 5 minutes later. Then my phone rang. It wasn't Rachel as I thought, but my mother. "Mark, hi Mom," I said. "What's happening?" she asked. "Did you read the package I sent?" I asked. "Yes, but then you know as much as I do," I said. "Rachel has been cheating on me, probably my entire married life, with her boss. The children are not mine. I'm divorcing her." "Mark, you can't," my mom said. "No, Mom, listen. I have to work. I have other calls," I said, and I hung up. It immediately rang again. This time it was Rachel. "Mark," she said. I didn't answer, waiting for her to continue. "We need to talk," she continued. Still no answer. "I am going back home," she ended the call. "Rachel is on her way," I told Jessica. "I'll step aside," she said. I wanted to ask her to stay, but I didn't know how to do it. I just looked up at her. "Call me," she said, "when you find out what's going on." She left. Rachel arrived home about 20 minutes later. I heard her car drive up to the house. She didn't even bother going into the garage. I didn't know what to expect when she walked into the house. I didn't know whether she would come in angry or slip away with her tail between her legs. Anyway, she came into my office and sat down opposite me at the table. "Mark," she began. "Not interested," I interrupted her. "But you don't even want to." "No," I said. "I don't want to hear a single word from your mouth. You lied to me for 9 years. Neither child is mine, but you convinced me to get a vasectomy while you were still on the pill, so you could continue with Daddy Daniel. At these words, her eyes widened. So no, Rachel, I continued. I don't care what you have to say. My lawyer's card is in the package you received when you were served. If you have something you think I should know, talk to her. What about the children? She asked. What children? I answered. I don't have children, and if it were up to you, I would never have them. I would ask why you did this to me, but I don't want to hear another lie. I'm not interested in your excuses, justifications, or reasons. I want this to end so I can pick up what's left of my life and move on. I called the nanny into the room. She could hear me because my office door was open, and she was only in the next room. You're fired, I said. Leave immediately. What? She said. Why? I said, pointing at Rachel. You knew she was having sex with her boss, and I don't know if you knew the kids belonged to him and not me, but you definitely knew what was going on. I have video evidence of you talking to Daniel about the children. Get out. Mark, Rachel said. You can't fire her. I pay her salary. The nanny looked at Rachel with a look of gratitude in her eyes. Okay, I said. I have already contacted the agency and informed them that you were complicit in an extramarital affair and agreed not to take any action against their company if they remove you from their register. So if Rachel wants to keep you, she will not only have to pay you but also take care of all the other things like taxes, vacation, pension, sickness, not to mention insurance. The nanny's face lost color. Not only did she lose her job, but she was removed from the agency's books. This would make it almost impossible for her to find other domestic work. Now get out, I said, and she ran away. Did you have to do this? Rachel said. She shouldn't have. You started talking again, I said. I told you I don't want to hear it. What I want is for you to get your things, get your kids, and get out of my house. This is my home too, she said. According to the documents, no. I said, it is registered in my name only, so until the courts rule otherwise, get the hell out. She jumped slightly when I shouted. Ethan entered the room. Mommy, he said. Mia fell. Rachel, with a stunned expression on her face and tears running down her cheeks, stood up and walked towards her daughter. I closed my office door and stayed inside while she packed her things. A few minutes later, she returned, holding Mia in her arms. Are you going to say goodbye to Mia? She asked. Not this time, I said. She is not my daughter, and he is not my son. Take them to Papa Daniel and let him take care of his children. They have nothing to do with me. Mark, get out, I said. She left. I heard the front door close and, a few minutes later, her car started up. She was gone. I released the breath I had been holding for what seemed like an eternity and crashed to pieces. I didn't hear the door open, and I jumped when a pair of arms wrapped around me as I sat with my head in my hands. I looked up and saw Jessica holding me. She pulled me to her and hugged me as I sobbed. It took me a while to pull myself together again. I just threw away 9 years. My marriage, my children, my life are gone. I really didn't want to look at the world anymore. Jessica took matters into her own hands again. Let's go, she said. Lorraine said it would take Rachel about 4 hours to get an emergency warrant to occupy the house because she has children, and this is a matrimonial home. She will be back. Do you really want to please her by letting her throw you out of your own home? We collected some of my clothes and all the important documents. I had to figure out where to stay, but I loaded my car with my things and left. We first went to the office where I was served later that day. Lorraine called me to wait for the presentation. There was not only an order to occupy the house, but also a restraining order, meaning that I was forbidden to come within 100 meters of the house. If I wanted to pick up anything, I would have to make an appointment and be accompanied by Rachel's attorney at my expense. Not understanding what was happening, I discovered that I had moved into Jessica's spare room. All my clothes were in the closet, and all my papers were now neatly stacked in the office cabinets. A week passed since Rachel filed. I would work and then go back with Jessica to her house to eat and then sleep. In the morning, she brought me coffee, cooked breakfast, and then we went to the office together. It seemed like nothing had changed between us. She was still all business. And other than a hug when I broke down at home on the first day, she never smiled at me. However, I had nothing to smile about anyway. On Monday morning, we had an appointment with the lawyers for the gallery that Rachel and Daniel worked for. I didn't know the details, but apparently, we filed a claim for an amount that the gallery couldn't afford. They had insurance, but the maximum amount was $1 million, and we were filing a claim for much more than that. Their lawyers were businesslike. Lorraine, my lawyer, grinned like a Cheshire cat. "What needs to be done?" their lawyer asked. "For you to agree to the immediate and permanent dismissal with loss of pension of the senior member," Lorraine replied, "and also an obligation to keep Rachel on staff for at least 3 years and $1.5 million. I was barely listening as they exchanged words. In the end, they agreed to all of the above, but I would only get $750,000. This would at least pay off some of the debt I had to the gallery pension fund. "All this will be paid after the divorce is finalized," said Lorraine. They nodded. They understood. Lorraine stayed with us at the next meeting. It was a meeting with Daniel Wright's lawyers. I left their office $500,000 richer. Now I had enough money to completely repay the pension fund loan, and at the same time I still had a small amount left on hand, or I would have done so after the divorce. My last meeting of the day was with Rachel's lawyers. Rachel was in the office with them but didn't look at me when I entered. Jessica was with me, as was Lorraine. "This accounting in the divorce petition is simply ridiculous," Rachel's lawyer began. "Your client is the main shareholder and CEO of a gallery whose value, according to recent estimates, is about $20 million, not to mention the assets in the house, savings, and 401k. I suggest—" "Let me stop you there," Lorraine said, taking a sheath of papers from her briefcase. "According to the prenuptial agreement signed by all parties, the gallery is not subject to divorce. My client recently made a significant additional investment in the gallery that took most of his savings, his entire 401k, and his home equity loan. He also had to take out a loan from the gallery's pension fund. One of the partners wanted to leave the gallery, and it was important that the shares did not fall into the hands of a competitor who had been trying to take over the business for several years. Because the pension fund loan means he is now on a reduced salary, he is now being paid less than your client, and I will be asking the court to enter into some kind of maintenance agreement so that he can make ends meet while he finds his footing." "What about the children?" asked her lawyer. "There's DNA evidence that these children are not his," Lorraine said. "Rachel deliberately falsified birth records to list my client as the father with the intent to defraud. In addition, and this is a separate issue, we are seeking to recover damages for serious assault when she knowingly persuaded him to undergo surgical sterilization, which he agreed to under the belief that he was the father of the children. The alternative is for your client to sign a divorce as is, pack up her belongings, and leave the marital home in his hands. She will receive half of the joint account, the balance of which at this time is just under $5,000. "Please," she said. "9 years. I said. 9 years you lied to me, day after day. You have nothing to tell me that I want to hear." Rachel looked at her lawyer and nodded. She signed the papers. I wasn't there when she left the house. I just received a letter from her lawyers saying the restraining order had been lifted, and the house was now mine. I could return to the house any time. I thought about it but decided against it. Instead, I put the house on the market. It didn't quite match the amount I owed the bank, but I made up the difference, and the bank walked away happy. 2 months passed, and I was still living in Jessica's spare room. After our divorce, Rachel moved in with her parents. Despite all the evidence I provided, they were firmly on her side and would not talk to me. For me, it was not a loss. For some reason, Stephanie did not divorce Daniel as she promised. I didn't know why and didn't want to find out, because he lost his gallery job and pension, They had to sell their house in the gated community and move into a small apartment. Daniel still had connections and skills in the art market, so he was able to find a reasonable job and earn a living, although not as much as before. I don't know if he and Rachel met. I haven't seen her since that day at her lawyer's office and had no interest in doing so. I was sitting at my desk at work when Jessica knocked and entered the room without waiting for an answer. "Daniel Wright is dead," she said without preamble. "What?" I asked. "Apparently, Stephanie caught him with Rachel again," she said. "She shot him." I leaned back in my chair. A dark smile formed on my face. I tried to remove it but couldn't. I couldn't help but think that justice had been served in some way. "Nothing could have happened to a nicer guy," I finally said. Jessica laughed. "Aren't you angry?" I asked her. "Because I'm satisfied about this?" "Not at all," Jessica said. "That bastard got what he deserved. By the way, this just arrived." She placed an official envelope on my desk. We both knew what was there. I took it and opened it. "That's it," I said. "I'm finally a free man." "Finally," Jessica said. Then she did what I least expected. She kissed me. It was not a peck on the cheek or even on the lips. It was a passionate, deep kiss with genuine emotion behind it. When she finally released me, I sat back in my chair, gasping, startled and surprised at this development. She smiled, looking at my obvious reaction. "For 9 years," she said, "I took care of you. You are the most perfect man I have ever met. You never even looked at me the wrong way, checked me out, or made me uncomfortable, and I loved you for it. I've been waiting for you for 9 years, and now you are free. I know that you have always respected me, and this is also a kind of love. We're a great team. I know you as well as any wife knows her husband, and if you think about it, you know me just the same. Give me a chance to show you that not all women are lying, unfaithful, or treacherous. Please." I was stunned. I remembered all the time I spent with her before I found out about the betrayal, and I thought about how I treated her. I fiercely defended her against my business partner to the point of getting him kicked out of the business. Then I realized that I had, and still have, real feelings for Jessica. I realized that it was impossible to work closely with someone for so long and not develop something. While I was with Rachel, there was no need to explore these feelings or evaluate them, but now there was definitely such a need. "Do you have anything to say?" she said. There was an expression of concern on her face. "How many?" I asked. She looked puzzled. "How much of what?" she asked. "Children," I said. "How many children should we have?" Thank you for your viewing. See you next time. If you enjoyed this, subscribe to JK Tells a Story for more tales.